It's working, yeah.
Yes. So let's hope it's gonna work today. I had a oh Abe, hi, you're here. Good to see you.
Yes, it's working great.
Awesome. Today I had a class. It went well, but after the class, my internet started acting up. So hopefully everything goes well.
I know one time I got kicked out from my own Zoom room 3 times because I can see the router is just blinking. Shoop.
Gosh.
That had
Yeah.
happened before. Yep.
And we think internet has made our lives easier.
True. Yes.
Let me see why I have to zoom up. That might be a problem later on. And
Yes, let's wait a couple more minutes because everybody's jumping in now.
sure, sounds good.
Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Cool. And I also have your PDF file as a backup. So
Okay. Do you want me to share screen now or to wait until when we're gonna get started?
I think I think we can get started. We have 17 people, prime number.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do this. And do y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. So the only introduction I have is I met Narges because of the Creativity and Cognition Conference. She is one of the paper chair, and this year we have record high submissions. So there's a lot of work to get all the reviewers sorted out. So I respect that, but I also got interested in her research. So that's why I'm inviting Professor Mahyar to come give us a talk about what she does. All right, I think we can start. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ellen, for the introduction. Also, I must mention it's been a great pleasure working with you on creativity and cognition. It's perfect to have you on board with all of your help and support. Okay, my name is Narges Mahyar. I'm an assistant professor in the College of Information and Computer Sciences at UMass Amherst, and I'm the co-director of HCI Viz Lab. Very excited to be here with you all today and to talk about our research on computing for the common good. More specifically, my lab works at the intersection of human-centered design, visualization, and social computing, and apply those tools and techniques into civic domain for community building and facilitating civic decision-making. We build tools that are equitable for the public to take part in decisions that affect their daily lives. So here's us at HCI Viz Lab. We are a young lab, but we are growing very fast. Just this fall, we will have 2 postdocs joining us, plus 9 new PhD students. We are also very excited to have Cindy shown as the new PI joining us in the fall. Our main goals are increasing civic participation, especially from marginalized communities, providing access to civic data, and democratizing the analysis of gathered input and ideas from communities. You can visit our website at this URL presented here, or follow our Twitter account to get updates about our research. In a nutshell, we build and study community-centered tools and visualization techniques. We develop novel visualization and interaction techniques to facilitate data exploration and analysis. So these three projects you can see here are early work during my PhD, focusing on building visual analytic tools for large interactive surfaces, which was very new and emerging at time, and building visualization support tools to help a group of analysts go through complex data and make their decision collaboratively and collectively. And then more recently in my lab, we have somehow focused on communicative visualization, in which we study how general public understand visualization and how visualization should be designed for universal usability. So the last piece is one of the more recent example from one of my PhD students. We build community-centered tools mainly to address real-world socio-technical problems in civic domains. I want to emphasize that our technologies are community-centered. And what I mean by community-centered is that we extend the notion of human-centered design coined by Don Norman and others in HCI to think about a group of people and their needs and issues, and be able to design tools in a very iterative manner with them to make sure their needs are met. So here are some examples of our work in community building and designing community-centered tools. This journey of focusing from collaborative visual analytics to civic domain started in 2014 when I joined UBC as a postdoc, and I started working on UDECO spaces for basically applying collaborative visualization knowledge into community engagement design. I got fascinated with the impact of this project idea that I said, hey, for the next 10 or so, I want to focus on building tools for this area. So today and in this talk, I'm going to go over basically giving you a short overview of all these 4 projects. If you are interested in any of our visualization research, I would be happy to talk offline. Engaging people on important civic issues is a cornerstone of democracy. But 20 years into the 21st century, public engagement continues to rely mostly on traditional face-to-face consultation methods, such as town hall meetings. I don't know how many of you have been in town hall meetings, but as you can see through this picture, only a few people get the opportunity to stand up and basically voice their ideas. Therefore, these methods rarely provide opportunities for inclusive participation, especially for reticent attendees who do not feel comfortable speaking up. So while everyone has their comments and ideas, and they have made all of the efforts to come to those meetings within their constraints, they can't speak up. And there are many reasons for their lack of active participation, such as fear of confrontation. Research has shown language barrier as an important factor here, or lack of argumentation skill. Another important factor is lack of time. These meetings are very intense, and even if you are comfortable speaking up, and if you raise your hand, there is no guarantee you'll get a turn to speak. So some researchers have argued that these required participation methods in the US, in particular public hearing, reviews, and comment procedures, not only do not meet the most basic goals for public participation, but they are also counterproductive, causing anger, mistrust from the public, and tensions. Furthermore, the organizers struggle to facilitate the meetings and capture attendees' feedback simultaneously. They have to run the meeting, manage discussions, collect data, resolve conflicts, and finally create a report. However, because of all of the challenges they face, it's really hard for them to record all of the public input and make sure they're not getting lost. So engaging the public has been a challenge for more than a century. It's a multifaceted problem. People call it a wicked problem. It's so many different challenges. Here I refer to some of the main challenges in area, and specifically those that my research tries to address. First is increasing public engagement. How can we increase public engagement? How can we engage reticent participants? How can we scale participation beyond those who are typically show up in public meetings and workshops? And finally, how to effectively record and analyze all of these scattered public input. So today I will go through these 4 projects, each of them trying to focus on at least one of these problems. First, I'll talk about UD spaces aiming to enhance and increase public participation. Then I'll talk about CommunityClick for engaging reticent participants. Then I'll move to CommunityCrit for scaling participation. And finally, I'll talk about CommunityPulse for utilizing public input. So UD spaces, it is short for Urban Design Collaborative Spaces. And as you may be able to see through this picture, it's a tabletop-centered multi-display environment for engaging the public in urban design charrettes. So you might be able to see there is a 3D view on the wall, and there are smaller handheld devices that are all connected to this tabletop system. This was a long-term interdisciplinary project at the University of British Columbia, where I worked with Kelly Booth in computer science, as well as 2 faculty members from the School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture. So the problem we were trying to solve, research shows that there is a lack of tool support during design charrettes, which are those intense meetings where facilitator invite the public to come join the experts and within few days come up with an applicable design for future of their neighborhood. So research shows that we need to better integrate data and visualization of information, employ interactive modes to engage people, and social and peer learning to enable members of the public with no knowledge of this very complex design process to interact with peers, learn from them, interact from experts, and basically be able to understand what's going on and have a way of participating in co-creation of design. There are collaborative technology for urban design. So perhaps best known is ERP from the MIT Media Lab and Hiroshi Ishii group. It's a workbench environment, which is collaborative with tangible user interface that allows urban planners to study how architectural structure will affect light and shadow and other factors that have an impact on urban design. But this was built for experts. It doesn't provide a way to engage the public, especially in understanding and comparing the impact of their choices and how can they come up with better design ideas. So with that, our research questions were around how to build collaboration technology and visualization techniques to engage diverse stakeholders, foster collaboration and co-creation, and increase understanding of impact of choices. So here's a very short video of how the system works. Here's a tabletop interface. At each corner, there is a case bar where user can explore different buildings. We call them cases in urban design. They can use for their own design, and they can tap on a case to view detailed information and then drag it to the map, interactive map on the surface. Spatial results display in 3D on project interface on the wall, and handheld devices enables remote interaction with the wall display when people are standing around the table. And we also built a visualization dashboard that allows people to choose and drag visualization of their favorite metrics. And this was because there are many metrics in urban design. We wanted people to focus on metrics that matters to them and for their design, so they can easily drag those to their canvas and see them updated in real time as they're making any changes to their design on the tabletop. This project followed an iterative user-centered process that took over 6 years and resulted 3 different versions. So in 2010, it was one single small tabletop system, and then became a larger tabletop to allow more collaboration, and it was connected with a large wall display. This version was deployed in Vancouver, City of Vancouver, in 5 different planning workshops, and we had 83 participants from community. And then finally, the third version is this multi-display version, which in addition to wall, it also introduced handheld devices to the design. So I'm showing you this, design timeline just to highlight, and I'm not going to do that for the rest of the project, but to highlight the rigor we use in terms of HCI methods in our work. So this is only for the third version. We started by going over and analyzing in depth videos that the group had taken from members of communities working with the system to understand what was working, what was lacking, and how we can potentially improve the system. Based on those observations, we came up with a new set of design goals. For example, it was obvious for us that there was a lack of personal space. The tabletop enabled collaboration, but people felt like they needed their own personal space to figure out something before proposing it to the group. Then we interviewed with experts to basically confirm those design goals and refine them based on what they think could work better, worked on the development of the system, and we had a formal evaluation with 37 participants at the end. But even before that, we also performed a heuristic evaluation with 3 domain experts to refine the system a little bit more before moving to the formal evaluation. For the evaluation, we decided to run a comparative study because no one had done it before. We wanted to see how our system, basically the third version, the multi-display version, works versus a paper-based version, and how and if it can help people to come up with better design, encourage collaboration, better discussion, and so on. So we tried our best to make these 2 situations similar in terms of printing the same size of the map people could see on the table, same highlighting an option. We also provided all of the building cases on these little cards you can see for each participant. So it's similar to when they have access to those case bars around the edges of the table. And then here are some of our findings. Participants appreciated how the tabletop surface promoted collaboration. For example, one said, having this tabletop got every stakeholder involved so they can make changes themselves, see those changes right away, and promotes collaboration. One very interesting observation here was The tabletop itself increased equity in participation. And what I mean by that, in our paper-based group, we observed there were a group of people who were guarding their design, just like this, with gatekeeping their design because they felt they have more knowledge of urban design than other members of the group. Versus it was fairly easy for the digital group to make changes and apply and redo and change. So everyone was more involved in making the design. We received many positive feedback about the multi-display environment and the fact that everything was synced. Our observation showed that 2D on the tabletop and 3D on the wall helped with dialogue, and we found that 3D was integral for engagement with the design process. One of the most important goals of this project was to provide alternative measurements to enable people to understand the impact of their design. We observed many instances of interaction with visualization dashboard that led to adjustment in their design and helped the digital group to come up with more informed decision in such a short amount of time. One participant mentioned having indicators in real time definitely altered how we approached the project. We could see the larger impact. So with that, the main contribution of this work was providing an engaging environment, making information and visualization accessible, especially for lay people, and most importantly, providing fast and early feedback on design alternatives. Next, I'm going to talk about CommunityClick. This work just recently received the Best Paper Award from CSCW 2020. And the main idea here was using eye clickers, which has been proven successful in education and also in public meetings, and modifying them to allow real-time use of eye clickers so that people can tag the meeting at any given time and say, I agree, I am confused what you're talking about, or slow down, or I'm sure. And then record a comprehensive account of the town hall meetings, and finally help the organizer to create a more comprehensive report. The main goal of this work was twofold. The first was empowering attendees, in particular the silent fraction, to express their opinion. And the second one was enabling organizer to create more comprehensive meeting reports. To do this research and better understand the needs of attendees and organizers in community consultation, we attended 3 town hall meetings in Amherst, and we surveyed 66 town hall attendees and 11 organizers to understand their current issues and whether or not they have been using eye clickers, whether they're comfortable using eye clickers, what sort of tags we can use for eye clickers, and so on. In this figure, you see a different set of eye clickers that we use. The blue ones was for the organizer to record their tags during the meeting, such as, hey, here's an issue people are talking about, or here's new idea that I need to pay attention to later on. And the gray ones were for attendees, which were with labels such as agree, disagree, unsure, important, and confused. We actually decided to label all of the eye clickers before handing them to our attendees to lower the cognitive load of mapping options to eye clicker buttons. And we learned that during some deployments of the tool in my HCI classes. And lastly, we created the eye clicker recorder to record all input in real time, which is different than normal eye clicker system. Here's the workflow of the system. We gather attendees' feedback plus organizers' tags through use of eye clickers. We record the meeting notes, and we use automatic speech-to-text transcription. And we call this an augmented transcript with all of these elements. Then we use topic modeling and text summarization, which is a novel text summarization we came up with to finally feed all of this information to our user interface. And this screenshot gives you an overview of how the system works. It consists of several components. As you can see, it's fairly busy. The first one shows the title with various meta information about the meeting. Then you can see the organizer's tags that are colorful tags and can be used to filter and explore the meeting discussion. So for example, an organizer might have tag, here's an issue. They can just filter it out later and find it out. Third is most important topics that we extracted from the meeting notes. And then you can see a timeline that provides a chronological distribution of organization tags to investigate the flow of conversation. Sometimes it's easier to think about something interesting happened in the beginning of the meeting. So the timeline helps with that. And then this view shows interactive feedback weighted summary that acts as an anchor to explore meeting discussion segments. Next, you can see a rich editor, text editor, which enables organizers to write their reports without the need to switch to a different text editor application. And finally, the augmented meeting transcript, which has organizers tag topics, as well as feedback from the community. We deployed CommunityClick in town hall meeting in Amherst on issues of parking in downtown. There were 33 attendees in that meeting. We talked about how to use iClickers during meeting and handed them the iClickers and then surveyed all of the participants after our meeting was over. These are some feedback from our attendees. So once we ask them if they are usually satisfied with town hall meetings, if iClicker was easy to use, and as you can see through this, most people agreed or strongly agreed that it was easy to use. I want to bring your attention to this part, which basically says 25% of attendees mentioned they didn't feel they're able to voice their thoughts in town hall meetings. And still, they made the effort to come to the town hall meetings 7:30 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. And then here's the results from people who said, I was able to voice my thoughts with iClicker. 85%, basically 7 responses from 33 people. This got us curious about understanding if iClicker really works better for people who can't normally speak up. So we dig down and we looked at individual account, and this figure basically shows that those people who said, I can voice my thoughts, speaking up, they said, I cannot voice, they were strongly in favor of iClickers. So basically showing that it really helped those people who are not normally comfortable speaking up to speak up or bring their ideas using iClickers. And for others, you don't see much of difference. So key findings and main contribution of this work was excuse me, creating a more inclusive platform to share opinion. The augmented transcript provided evidence of attendees' reflection and feedback, and the web interface itself helped organizer in creating more comprehensive report. Excuse me. So next, I'm going to talk about CommunityClick with the idea of, okay, let us think about those people who cannot, for any reason, for caregiver responsibility, busy professionals or parents, or a lot of other constraints, for those people who can't make it to public meetings? How can we scale it up to those people? This project was inspired by crowdsourcing methods to engage the public at scale and enable them to not only bring their ideas, but also improve and evaluate ideas rather than just merely proposing idea. This work was part of my second postdoc research at UC San Diego with Stephen Dow. To give you some background about other online tools for public participation, and this is one example, Plan Your Place. This tool was built for everyday citizen to participate in urban design process, but the authors found that lay people needed to invest a lot of time to be able to participate in this process. So not that easy for everyday citizen. There are other fairly easy to use crowdsourcing tools. Wikisurvey is a perfect example, which asks pairwise ideas from the member of the public. This tool has been deployed in many cities like Chicago, New York, and many other cities, and basically ask people like which idea you like better, or please come up and let us know of your own idea. However, our research showed that people are getting fed up with government and officials constantly asking them what they want, as opposed to provide a way for them to actively participate in shaping ideas for their own environment. So with that, our research questions were around how can we create a system for activities that are beyond opinion polling that capture quality feedback in a short amount of time. And this is because people don't have a lot of bandwidth and time to participate. We started this research with partnering with a group of planners who were rebuilding downtown San Diego and attended their first workshop. The workshop, they wanted to get people's input on the new extension proposal to rebuild downtown San Diego. We attended the session. You might be able to see me here. My teams were with me to basically record all of the conversation at different tables, take picture of all of the screenshot of their design. And also at the very end, we surveyed people about, the use of how face-to-face processes works for them, if they are interested in using technology, if we build some, if they have access to online technology, and so on. So based on our need finding studies, our system design and considerations were providing a quick and flexible workflow, designing questions based on relatable metrics. So instead of asking fairly complicated question about urban design, we could ask people, hey, evaluate this idea based on its impact on quality of your life, providing social interaction, and finally sending people directly into quick activities. So here's a link to CommunityClick. It's an online tool. In order to lower the barrier for the public, it works on a variety of devices, including smartphones, because nearly 90% of participants said they have access to the smartphone. So the platform gives them a short background on the design problem. In this project, we focus on developing ideas for a key intersection you can see in this picture called El Nudillo in downtown San Diego. CommunityClick structures a process where participants choose an idea, an urban design concept either submitted through our platform or created during one of the in-person workshops, which we put it online. And then borrowing principles from crowdsourcing, the system delivers a set of 5 questions or activities, such as improving the idea or critiquing the idea based on some design guidelines or considerations, or posing your own questions for the community. And then we provided a skip option because we were interested in gathering meaningful ideas. If they feel they're not comfortable providing input, they could skip it and still be done after 5 questions. They can then submit their own ideas, give it a name and add a picture for it. So other members of the community can evaluate and elaborate on those ideas. At the end, they get to see a full set of ideas. So these are different proposals, and they could click to explore the comments and questions from the community. After this work was deployed in community of San Diego for 4 weeks, we received 352 contributions from 39 community members, which was a great achievement for the planning group in such a short amount of time. And then we interviewed our participants from community as well as experts and urban planners in our team, and they found the tool empowering, easy, and straightforward. So one said, I don't have time to go to workshop, so it provides opportunity to give feedback. The other mentioned the importance of asking only 5 questions because otherwise people get bored. In sum, our contribution in this work were scaling and diversifying public participation from those typical people who make it to public workshop to a broader range of people, but also, more importantly, CommunityClick was successful in engaging people to elaborate, to criticize those ideas rather than merely voicing issues or submitting ideas. It also created a link between those people who go to a public workshop where others who are more comfortable basically providing online feedback. One of the feedback that urban planners gave us on the project was their difficulty of surfacing the key themes in those people comments. They said, this is a really nicely designed, they could see project ideas with picture and all of the comments, but they said it's hard for them to sift through all of those comments. So next, I'm going to talk about CommunityPulse for utilizing those inputs. We built CommunityPulse in response to urban planners' request to build a tool that can magically show the pulse of the community at one glance, and that's why we called it CommunityPulse. The goal here is to show the pulse of community in an overview. It's a visual analytic tool to help civic leaders explore an overview of their data and further analyze community input in detail as needed. This work is going to appear hopefully in DIS 2021. So this wasn't only the problem of urban designers that we worked with. This problem have been, mentioned in research before, and it's because the rise of online platforms, which has enabled civic leaders to collect vast amount of community input. While analyzing such input is vital in making decisions that are democratic, civic leaders struggle to analyze them. And it's due to lack of time, lack of analytical skills, as well as specialized tools for them. And this was actually confirmed by a very in-depth need-finding study and interviews with civic leaders we earlier did in 2019. There are tools like Considerate is one of the famous ones that helps civic conversation to stay focused. So as you can see, it's a very nice visual interface where you can see people who agree or disagree, and they can write up their top cons and top pros. But it's harder to analyze people's needs and issues in this pro-con list format. There are also visual analytic tools that are helpful in terms of going through textual conversations and understanding their sentiment. But as you can see, this system tend to get fairly complex. And in our interview with civic leaders, they specifically asked for some sort of tools that are fairly easy and familiar to use. So based on all of our need findings and another set of interviews where we showed some prototype to civic leaders, we came up with 5 design goals for this project. Extracting community reaction. And it's because they mentioned that most important task for them is to understand community feelings and main reactions toward the proposal. They wanted to understand if people are angry or if people are excited about a project, and that was their most important task as they mention it. They also wanted to provide a way like an overview, like a visual summary, support inspection of individual comments as needed, allow comparison between proposals for making decisions, and finally, support tech unsavvy domain expert. So with all of that, we built CommunityPulse. This is also an online tool. First, in this screenshot, you can see an aggregated view in which you can see proposals. Please note that this is the same data set that we used in CommunityClick. So basically, these are real community input data. So here we structured them differently. You can see all of the proposal. You can see number of people who participated or commented on those, but we also extracted the main topics from those proposals. So in this example, you can see that roundabout have been selected with the traffic issue. And then, most importantly, here's the emotion category. So based on our interviews back and forth with civic leaders, we came up with 5 main emotions. One was excited, happy, neutral, concerned, and angry. Because they said it's very important for us to know if people are angry about certain proposal. And then they can see the detailed view where they can basically select any of these interactive bars visualization to drill down and read those comments in detail. Main contribution of this work was helping civic leaders to understand community reaction, to surface those hidden anomalies, to find similarities between proposal, and discovering the community's priorities based on our results. So what these projects share is increasingly important as we move to the future of engaging communities in civic decisions and democratizing civic participation. While our approaches were successful in increasing public engagement and improving the analysis of public comments, I'd say these are only the beginning steps by building and testing some interventions. There is a long road ahead of us to address other key challenges and try out different interventions and methods to build socially impactful technologies that are scalable and adaptable for civic decision-making. Our lab mission is to build socially impactful technology that also include marginalized perspectives and empower data-informed decision-making. So with that, one of the future work area is increasing participations. There are still a lot of new ways and methods we can use, such as gamification, bringing art and infographics to make these complex data more accessible to the general public. Fostering inclusion and diversity, I would say this is one of the most important issues in this domain. And we can think about increasing public access while using variety of modality and going beyond technology for those people who are not comfortable using it. One example of projects that we recently done in this domain is Rising Emotion. So this paper just got accepted at Creativity and Cognition 2021. And this is a pilot project where we combined technology and public art installation to visualize the public feelings about the sea level rise and the impact of climate change. This is the installation you can see here. In this work, we built an online survey asking residents of East Boston, which is a highly vulnerable place, about how they feel about flooding in their area, giving them some information about how flooding will affect their neighborhood in the future. And based on our need finding research, we asked for 4 main emotions, basically optimistic, concerned, sad, and angry. And here are results from 165 participants. You can see a lot of concern, and interestingly, there were also some good amount of optimistic ideas and comments. So what we did, we actually involved members of community, including students from schools close to the East Boston Library, to help us with, first of all, inscribing those comments on these colorful ribbons that are basically associated with the feelings we use in our survey, and installing the art installation in front of the East Boston Public Library. This was a highly visible place and a gathering place for many community members in East Boston. We had an opening exhibition in December 2020. The installation was on display for 2 weeks, and I don't have the time to go through detail of this work, but it proved to be successful, increasing engagement, and most importantly, increasing awareness around climate change issues. So here you can see that a lot of community members visited, their children played around the installation, which was also this, contrasted this grim reality of the projected flood level of 3.7 feet by the year 2070. Lastly, I want to wrap up with our vision for future work, for expanding our work by building novel tools to support advanced stages of decision-making process, such as consensus building, which is fairly important for civic issues because there are always intense conversation. There's always conflict between different stakeholders, and building tools to enable community to take part in sense making of such complex civic data collaboratively and collectively. This is one example of work we did in building visualization tools for consensus building in small groups, but definitely this is only one example. We need to do more work in terms of understanding how to help people to come up with common ground in such a conflicting space. I want to acknowledge that these projects were collaborative efforts and thank my amazing collaborator and my fantastic students at UMass and beyond. The last row showcases my student at UMass. And with that, thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions. Sure. Who's gonna moderate the questions?
I think Katie has her hand up. If I miss anybody, sure, go ahead.
Hi, Narges. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm really inspired by some of the work you've been able to accomplish with your collaborators. I'm wondering how these tools for engaging communities, how did they engage with conflict and things like justice in the communities? Was there any tool or intention in getting people to resolve differences they might have had about things?
Wonderful question, Katie. Thank you so much. As I said, this is a very important, task and activity in civic decision-making workflow for sure. None of the tools that we built were intended to resolve conflicts, right? So One project that was special for us was CommunityClick in San Diego. We saw a lot of tension between two different communities, which the intersection was at the border of white affluent community versus a Chicano community, and there were always this tension of gentrification, and we don't want change. So we went to that community and talked with their leaders, and we learned that they are even more interested in CommunityClick because they said, we do make the time to come to the workshop. Nobody listens to us. So maybe your tool enable us to bring our ideas up and have an influence. We also, the other thing we did, we also translated our basically questions to Spanish for that community. And we created a lot of, basically catalog and posted in different places in terms of libraries and places that their community can have access to the tool. And as I said, we specifically surveyed those groups to make sure they have access to smartphones, and a fairly large number of them have access. But unfortunately, I left San Diego afterwards. After joining UMass, I didn't have a time to follow up on, the decision-making process of the project. Excellent question. Are there any other comments or questions?
Sure, I'll jump in. Hi, I'm Mark. I have some experience with at least some of the tools that you mentioned, and you have a impressive and comprehensive approach to all the different dimensions of essentially participatory design. One of the things that struck me as I was looking at your tools, admittedly on a very small screen and admittedly only snapshots, is reminds me of the project management tools that people use these days, like Trello, for example. And they're quite effective, but they also require a fairly large, steep learning curve. It's not easy for a group to start and continue using Trello, and I can't count the number of times that the team has given up on using them. And I wonder whether your tools have a similar learning curve, and what your experience is with people continuing to use these tools.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Thank you, Mark. I do agree with Trello. I also gave up on using Trello myself. So yeah, HCI people always have strong opinions about what works and what doesn't work and why. In terms of our project, we were fascinated by UD Quest Spaces. So UD Quest Spaces was the most complex system we ever built, with 3 different, display, different sizes, a lot of things going on. But even for that project, we used Google Map on the tabletop, and also, sorry, oh wait. That's fantastic. I'm in the middle of the talk, honey. And we use basically Google Earth for the 3D view. So we realized that a lot of people, even the older adults, because of using touch-based smartphone, were familiar with touch interaction. And actually, we argued in that paper that touch interaction-based technology can be used for bringing novices in terms of education in different domains, because it proved to be successful. We had high school students interacting with the tools, but in average, from normal public, we explained the tool for a few minutes, and it didn't take more than 5 minutes for people to understand how to use the tool. We were always there for answering questions, but we never heard anyone saying, hey, I don't know how to use it, I'm stuck here. So that was a fairly good news for UD Quest Spaces. For CommunityClick, I would say it was fairly straightforward. So there were like just next button, like any other surveys they've seen, like here's your question, just press next. CommunityClick, for the member of the CommunityClick for the public members, which was only basically clicking on iClickers. I do agree that the interface gets more complicated, but we always build help and tutorials and embed videos in our tools. So the 15 organizers that we interviewed with and worked the system, they didn't complain. I do agree that it takes some, it has a learning curve, but it wasn't something that they couldn't work with. And comparing to other fairly complex visual analytic tools, I should say using bar charts and clicking our bar charts was fairly easy interaction for them to figure out.
Narges, hello. I know Narges from UMass. I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this, and because there's I was thinking through how to phrase this for a while. Because there's this gap, I'll jump in. To what extent are these kinds of tools, which provide infrastructure for facilitating public comment, to what extent do the people who receive this feedback, are they trying to process and understand the feedback in good faith? And to what extent are they responding? Is there this infrastructure that's in place that's responding to a bunch of political actors that are trying to manipulate the infrastructure to get what they want out of a political process? And I guess, how does that intersect with the way that you design these sorts of tools?
Very good question, Abe. For those of you who don't know Abe was a PhD student at UMass Amherst. I had the pleasure to work with him for over a year on a HCI-based project we did together, and he joined UC Colorado last year. Am I correct? As a lecturer. So excellent question, Abe. We had actually moderation for CommunityClick. We had a moderator who was going over all of the comments and making sure there is no swear or incomplete messages but we didn't have any extensive censorship for any other comments from the community. There are always people who want to rally their ideas. We didn't see that in CommunityClick, and therefore moderation is always important in civic, technology. Later on, when we use Pulse to analyze those data, one of our interviewer, one of the civic leaders who work with the system, found that there is one single user, anonymous, called user 44, who posted several negative comments for several proposals. So that's why I said CommunityPulse was helpful to finding those abnormalities in the data that we weren't able to see before. So we kind of ignore that person because we realize that this person, for whatever reason, doesn't like roundabout idea, and therefore have posted several negative comments about that. It's an issue in real life. It's an issue in face-to-face, and it's a big issue in online spaces. That's why I said the next stage of our research is going to be applied to basically later phases of decision making, to understanding those conflicts, to resolving those conflicts. But right now we don't have anything in place.
I was thinking, as you're talking about the systems for soliciting comment from, I think it's like the FTC, probably know more about these things, but there are these systems where they solicit online comment, and then people form, essentially like online mobs, and then they start like dumping in each other, and they're kind of fighting each other through the online system. And you're dealing with such a smaller scale thing that maybe it's not the same issue, but I was thinking about situations like that, where it's like people who are deliberately trying to manipulate these tools to push particular agendas.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of deliberation tools that are specifically have been built for, helping people to see the other side of basically the other side and the other point of view, and helping them to resolve some of them, or at least build common ground. But that's a fairly complicated space.
Yeah, sort of along those lines, I guess one could measure the degree to which interacting with these tools produces at least, if not a consensus, at least an understanding of alternate points of view. So if you look at a design problem as multi-objective, some people want this and some people want that, and there should be a way to measure whether a group gains shared understanding or understanding of each other's perspectives over time. I don't quite know how to do that. But.
I love that idea. If you're in Fred, I would love to collaborate with you in that direction. That's an interesting one. There has been work from when I was at Design Lab, Scott Clemmer and one of his students were working on, building a tool that basically puts people in the chat with different view to be able to communicate a different and opposite view. Julia Cambry joined CMU afterwards. I don't know if she basically continued that line of work, but I know that there are ways of at least communicating opposite viewpoints. It would be very interesting to measuring understanding of different viewpoints. And that was one of the reasons we enabled social interaction, so people can see other comments, other ideas from others and say, no, I don't like it, or yes, this would totally work for my neighborhood. But measuring, it would be an interesting research question.
We could even use it in faculty meetings.
I like that. Yes.
It's been delightful. I have to go to a meeting, but thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much for participation. Awesome. Any other last moment questions or comments? Okay, lovely. It's been great to be here to give a talk and to get to know some of you. Thank you for the invite again, Ellen.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. And this is the end of the semester, so I think people are jumping around to different classes or meetings as well. Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
See you, Narges.
See you all. Bye.